was born September 2nd in Salt Lake City, 1931. And that was a holiday, and strangely enough, it was Labor Day. I was the last of 13. That was 2 marriages, but I was the baby. So next one was 5, 5 years older than me, and that was Ted, who lived in Florida, who I visited all the time, and we were pretty close. I have a Comer and a Sam and a Geneva and a Leona. Then from my mom's side we had Virginia and Kay. And then we had Sam and Elvie and Jack and Ted and me and you. We had 2 more. I think they were Bobby and Earl, but they died in infancy. Elvie, E-L-V-I-E, that's a different kind of name. Elvie E. Smith, and my mother's name was Clarabelle Pepper P. Smith. And my grandmother was a Florence Pepper, and she came across the plains with a handcart company. Like I say, my father came home from work Christmas Eve, 1952. Sat down in a chair. He walked everywhere. Sat down in a chair, and we had our old TV, and was watching the TV, and he died on Christmas Eve. And I had just gotten back out of the military, and my mother lived with my older brother and brothers in a house, and she died in the 80s, I think. And I had a professor who said, well, I have a home in Bountiful, why don't you come out and take a look see? We came out and looked, and I said to Nancy, what do you think, Johnny? She said, you really want to live in Bountiful? That's way out in the boondocks. Herk, and that's spelled H-E-R-K. And I've had it all my life. When I was young, probably under 10, like I say, I had older brothers. I never looked for fights, but I never backed down on anything. And if I ever got into it, I usually came out winner. So my brothers dubbed me Hercules, which was crazy. And so it was just named Herk. And I carried that through school. My professors called me Herk. Church called me Herk. Well, I did things with my brothers being older. My father was much older, and he worked all the time, and my mother was older, so my brother, I told you, was 5 years old. He had a bike, and he would drive me all around on his bike to Ensign Peak, to the zoo, to out to the airport, everywhere, and that was kind of the fun things. I remember 2 things. I didn't know how to swim. I became a second-class scout because I couldn't swim. So my brothers, one day when I was about 8 or 9, took me to the Liberty Park swimming pools, outdoor pool, threw me in the deep end, and had to fish me out, okay? And that kind of put a little fear in the water. Nowadays, I swim every morning, but that I remember. Plus, my brother taught me to drive when I was about 14, in an old car called a Hupmobile. And then just going out on fishing trips with my brothers and that kind of thing, yeah. My father and mother were actually older, kind of set in their ways, so we didn't do a lot. Mostly was raised by my brothers. One thing I remember when I was about 13 or 14, had a sister who lived in Birmingham, Alabama, so I went by Greyhound bus by myself to visit that sister. I had always wanted to go. In fact, I was the only one in the family. My brothers, nobody but in my family but me went to college. And I just decided, when I came out of, before the military, I went in. I got out of high school at age 16, enrolled in the university. Then after a year, I ran out of money. So I had to work, and then I went into the military. When you come back from the military, that time they had a deal where they give you a lot of money to go to school, so that's what I did. And I was on, at that time, it was a streetcar school. I didn't have a car, so I relied on buses, streetcars to get up there, and it worked out pretty well. I initially was interested in fish and game, wildlife service and that, but they're kind of like the military in the sense that you can be here for 2 or 3 years, then they transfer you somewhere else. And I particularly didn't want that. Plus, there's not a great deal of money, so in college I was interested in, I majored in sociology and minored in anthropology. So I liked that, and I figured, you know, well, I don't know what I could do with sociology, but so I went and applied to get into the master's school, a degree at the school. When I was about 19, and that was after the 1 year of college, and I had friends who joined. It was the Korean War at that time. Had friends who joined the military, Army, and what Navy, and what Air Force. But they were in for 4 years. Okay, that was their duty time. So I joined the Air National Guard. And the next month we were activated. So we went into the military for about 18 months. And I went in at that time as an enlisted person and got to become a sergeant and then come out, and I'd had enough of the military. And then after I got my master's, I had an opportunity to go into the Army, the Army Reserve, in a hospital unit. And I was commissioned as a first lieutenant. I stayed with them, went in next year, became a captain. Then as a major, what they called unit headquarters commander, the commander of the troops, over all the troops. We had in that unit 750 enlisted personnel and about 170 officers, including doctors, nurses, physical therapists, you name it. So I stayed with them. I enjoyed it, went to schools and this kind of thing, and eventually got to be able to be a bird colonel and executive officer of the hospital. Met a lot of nice people, and it worked out very well. And of course, obviously when I retired, because I'd had 26 years for pay in the military, most of reserve, I was able to get retirement pay, and that worked out pretty well. In the military, many, many years ago, we've got people, we used to call them the old brown shoe army. You do it my way or the highway kind of thing. I tried not to be that way. Okay, and when I came out of the military from the Korean War, I had a friend who lived what was called Hampton Avenue in Salt Lake City. And years ago when I was a youngster, we lived on that street. Nancy lived on that street, but not when I was there. And one day I was visiting my friend there, who later became a physician, and I saw Nancy, and I said, "Who's that?" And he said, "That's Nancy Dietrich, her father and mother came from Germany." And so I said, "Well, you know, I'd like to get to know her." And so she was still in high school. And so we got together and we dated for 3 years. And in the university I was in Sigma Chi. It was traditionally you gave them a pin, so when you were interested in them, they had you kind of thing. So we dated in 3 years and married in 1955. Mm-hmm. She was a little more strict than I with the kids. The kids do this, they could work it back and forth, and she was a very, very bright. She always took pride in how she looked. Mm. When she went, she dressed nice, looked nice, so forth, and she loved to learn. So when we married after I got my BS. Then went on to graduate school. We lived actually in the U, by the U. She was a very bright lady. She always wanted to go back to school. So years later, after we used to call it PHT, putting your husband through college. Okay. So after that, I got that. Then she wanted to go back to school. So she went back in the 70s and got her degree and became a member of Pi Beta Kappa. And what was there? I went through some of her old paper. Every paper she ever wrote, she got A+, excellent, we wish we had more students like you, kind of thing. And I didn't realize, but when she graduated, the president of the university asked her if she would like to be the person giving the baccalaureate speech, and she respectfully declined. When first met her and after high school, of course, when in high school she worked at a place called Sun Photo on her high school year. She loved piano, knew how to piano. When we were married, she taught piano for about 20 some odd years. And one day she was living in her ward. She was about 16 or 15, somewhere there. The bishop came to her and said, "We need somebody to play the organ." And he knew Nancy played the piano, and she said, "I've never played the organ." The bishop said, "Here are the keys, go do it." So she learned to play the organ and used to play the organ for the church. And then later on she played the organ in the Bountiful Temple after a while, kind of thing. Like I say, she learned, she was bright, she was very capable, kind of thing. And she loved to read. And you know, it was kind of low when she got that disease, because she used to walk about 3 or 4 or 5 miles every morning, you know, up in Bountiful. But with cancer, you never know what's going to happen. Well, we were married in the Salt Lake Temple. I think at that time, I think his name was President L. Ray Christiansen, was the temple president in Salt Lake, and he married us. But anyway, we had that reception. She was a Tri-Delta, Delta, Delta, Delta at the university. So we had that reception in the Tri-Delta house. It was nice. It wasn't huge, but it was nice, you know. And then after that, we went on our honeymoon to Sun Valley for a while. And came back and settled down in a little apartment by the U so I could finish school. I worked at the Utah State Hospital, a psychiatric hospital at a state hospital, worked with the mentally ill. I lived in Bountiful, but commuted to Provo. And I worked with the mentally ill and ran psychiatric groups and this kind of things. And then I had friends who worked for the VA hospital in Salt Lake. And they said to me one day, "They have an opening, come on and come aboard." So I went to the VA hospital for a while. I was there for 2 years. Made a lot of good friends, a lot of good people. We had kind of a director, if you will, of the department wasn't the kindest man in the world, we'll put it that way, okay. But anyway, so an opportunity, I was there for about 8 or 9 years, and an opportunity came for me. I went and became the director of Travelers Aid Society in Salt Lake City. Travelers Aid is no longer, they became the road home, but at that time we had worked with a lot of runaways and all these kinds of things. And I was able to go back at that time and get my PhD, my doctorate. And then after I got that, I got a call from a friend that I had worked, who I went to school with, the social work. And then he was at the VA with me, then he became the director of social work at the University Hospital. And he had an opening as co-director, associate, asked me if I'd like to join him, and so I went up to the U Hospital as associate director of that department. Then he retired and I became director of the department. And I was able to do we call it private practice. I was a consultant to nursing homes for private pay kind of thing. Then after I left the hospital, someone asked me if I'd like to be consultant at Rocky Mountain Home Care and Hospice in Bountiful. So I did that for about 9 years, and that was kind of a little difference. I got tired when I went to the Utah State Hospital after that of the one-to-one after, you know, this was a little bit, this is more administrative and making sure you got your budget. Same way in Travelers Aid, Travelers Aid was a United Way agency, so you had to present to them to get monies for the next year. And that took me there. Probably at the University Hospital, because I had the opportunity to go around to all the departments, work with a lot of physicians who became friends, who were, you know, very sharp, the kind of thing, and that was enjoyable. I had a good staff, and they were very competent and did a job right away. Didn't have too many problems that way. Then when I was able to be a consultant to the home care hospice company, that had good people there. That's been lucky that way. Mm-hmm. Just about the day Disneyland opened, we didn't have all of this there by that time, but we went down there when they were still quite young. On UEA days, coming up in a couple of weeks, every time that happened, we'd go up to Yellowstone. Mm-hmm. That was a great time. And we enjoyed all those kinds of things. Didn't have television to speak of. So I used to go to all those. In high school, Linda was a scholar. She got a full ride at Utah State. She wanted to go to Utah State. Alan played sports until he hurt his back at football, quarterback. And he gave that up, and Susie, she was in all the plays. Carousel, she had the lead, and she sang all of that. And then Karen became a cheerleader. As you well know, I mean, kids can be a challenge occasionally, one way or another. I don't remember, maybe I'm blocking, that they were nasty to each other. They had differences, surely, and they could be a little forceful, but I don't think them ever made it. And I made an agreement with them. I call it, nowadays it's just common, I call them garbage words, you know, I mean, all the things you hear on TV, and I made an agreement every time they heard me say one, I'd give them $1. I don't think I ever spent over $5. I've got to give credit to Nancy, because to her, camping out was a motel without a swimming pool. But conversely, she used to take the 4-H girls to Smith and Morehouse and to Mirror Lake and things like that. So she was a good sport that way. I've been one of my most favorite. I love the Uintas. I used to go around to all the Uintas. We used to go to Wind River Range in Wyoming. It's a wilderness area. You backpack in. We go there about once a year. You backpack in. It's about 6 or 7 miles, and then you stay there and fish. You know, I was a fly fisherman. I didn't particularly like to eat trout, but I can remember up in the Wind River catching 50 or 60 fish in a day and putting them all back. You know, that was before it became popular to catch and return kind of thing. Part of it because I didn't, if they were halibut, that would have been another story. I would have eaten them. But that, yeah. So on the Mirror, we used to, as a family, go to Mirror Lake, and that used to be fun. I also was a hunter, not a big game hunter. I didn't like deer hunting that, but I liked to hunt pheasants and ducks. And I had 3 friends who had airboats. So I wasn't a foot soldier, and so they would go out with them and hunt the ducks. Unfortunately, they'd keep the ducks. I always hoped that I could shoot the ducks and then blow it back up and let them fly away. After me came the Beatles and the rock and that. In high school, we listened to what I called jazz, pure jazz. That was our big thing. In fact, in Salt Lake, they had one gentleman that had a mustache, beard, black hair. He used to call himself Al Jazzbo Collins. And we used to listen to him. I like most all music. I'm a fan of the old musical productions in New York. I loved the music. I enjoyed it. And Nancy and I used to go dancing probably once or twice a week. And we would go in Salt Lake. They had an officers club at Fort Douglas. We'd go there on a Saturday night and dine and dance, and that was kind of. We used to go to the Symphony and the Pioneer Memorial Theater. And I'll listen to Nicola Susie's productions. Started out in the old Tabernacle under the balcony by posts. And gradually worked our way up. We sat on the last row on the balcony in the center, okay? And when that, I can't remember, row 10, 15, 20, something like that. And finally, as we worked down to the very front row of the balcony in the center, in the Tabernacle. And we had symphony tickets for 25, 30 years, and Pioneer Memorial Theater tickets for about that same time. So we enjoyed music. Like I say, Nancy played the piano, so that was fine. That's one thing. Two things I'd like to have done: learn to play the piano or the banjo. Oh, I think obviously one of the most proud was meeting and marrying Nancy and being together for a long, long time, and then all the kids, that came along. And I enjoyed being in the military and being able to work my way up to the colonel and directing to the Traveler's Aid and the Department of the U and all that, and making a lot of good friends like that. Years ago when I was working, we used to go to the old Deseret Gym in Salt Lake, okay? And I would go there, I wasn't swimming then, we would play a pickup basketball game with guys who had played for the U and the Y and that, and I felt I could stay with it. And we called ourselves the Nooners. And we did this, and that was relatively handy to come from down from the U to the rec center, and especially when I was at Traveler's Aid, it wasn't very far away. But then when I got out here, I started the old bubble. Well, no, before even the old bubble, there used to be a rec center on First East in Bountiful, right across from the police station. We started there, and then they built the old bubble. Now they made the new rec center, so I just kind of stayed with it, Yeah, of course, I used to go to Florida, to Cocoa Beach, twice a year to visit with Ted. And then we'd go walk the beach. And he would pull out a mini cigar and say, "This is the only time I smoke a cigar, when we walk on the beach," kind of thing. I told him I'd always come to see him, but never in the summertime. And he was the only brother. Well, most of my other brothers were deceased by then. And he was the only brother. I say we were the closest that we did things. We'd go out to dinner all the time along in Cocoa and all, Merritt Island and all these places, kind of thing. The big one for me was the Korean War, kind of thing. That had, and I grew up in the Depression times. My father had a business. He had a little meat shop, and he was a butcher. But friends would come in hungry, and he would give them foodstuffs and meat and what have you. And they would pay him back, but they never did have money to pay him back, so he lost his business kind of thing. And I remember that. So I grew up again in a family with not a great deal of money and kind of thing like that. As a kid, we had coal wood stoves that would heat up the water heater and also that you cooked on. And ice boxes where they had people coming around from Hygeia Ice delivering ice that you put in the top of this little gadget, and it kept things relatively cool. I spent a little more time with Nancy, and I should have told her every day how nice she looked in that, because she really liked to take care of herself. It was very, and like you say, she liked to read and liked to learn and that kind of thing, and make that feel important. And with her kids too. Those are the kind of things I would have told myself. You know. I think my advice would be to respect others, show your concern and your appreciation, not be too, again, judgmental or condemning, and recognizing that, you know, we're all different in many ways. We all have strengths and we all have limitations, kind of thing. And that would probably be the biggest kind of thing. I'm anticipating that all the grandkids will go to college. Now beyond that, what they do, that's up to them kind of thing, but I think going to a college or university just helps to round out a person. I think whatever you want to do it, you know, I mean, you have, I think you all have capabilities of doing whatever you want. Anyway, I have a story about ducks, all right?
Okay.
My friend said, how do you like duck? Nowadays on the cooking show, they have a lot of shows on ducks, how they prepare both. I said, well, they said the best way to cook and eat a duck is get a piece of cedar wood bigger than the duck. Get your duck, clean it, dress it, whatever it needs. Put lots of spices and butter and everything, and bake it for a couple of hours. Pull it out, throw away the duck and eat the board.